Happy New Year, buddy.
Hey, the year, finally, 2021. Today is January 4th. The year, as we said, 2021. Welcome aboard. This is the Crushing Iron Podcast, Season 5, Episode 440.
Oh, and we have some plans for you.
Oh, do we? It's a new new season. We're going to have
format.
new characters and new plot lines. And yeah, just wait till you see the epic finale in 100 and something episodes down the road. But yeah, did you have a good New Year?
Cereal,
Did you stay up late in fireworks?
Oh yeah, I was up. I think I
Fire
stayed up
engine
almost
fireworks?
till 12.
Did you?
Yeah. The neighbors downstairs were having a big shindig. Actually, I was up till about 3 because of them. Thankfully, and I didn't go down to join them. So
that's I think I went to. What was December? I stayed up a little bit later than normal. I think I was up to like 10:15.
nice,
Which
job,
is
man.
I'm telling you, the last
that's
three
impressive.
nights I've gone to bed past 10. And the flip side of that coin is though, then I wake up at like 6, and my normal routine has been like wake up at like 5, and I go to bed early. And I'm waking up, I'm thinking, oh, dude, I feel so rested. And then I'm like, wait, but dude, you went to bed like an hour and 20 minutes later than you normally do, so you probably got less. But it's just that mind warp thing. But
yeah, but
whatever.
Then the text comes. You want to start the podcast later? I like it. You're coming my way, baby.
Coming my way, baby. But no, it's hey, welcome in. We hope you've had a great start to the new year and had a good chance to unwind and unplug and enjoy some time with family and friends over the holidays. We're excited about, as we said, this new season. But yeah, for most part, it's just another podcast. It's just another episode. We appreciate you tuning in. We know you have a lot of options out there in the podcast universe and also the triathlon podcast universe. So we appreciate you.
Universe.
It's a lot. There's a lot out there. So thanks for tuning in, giving us your time. For your first time listening, we cover it all. We have 439 other episodes to go back and listen to. Mike does an outstanding job of doing bullet points and outlining those. You can go back and pick and choose. You can go back and start at number 1. Frankly, why am I even telling you what you can do? You're going to do whatever you want to anyway. So yeah, do what you want. Listen in order. Listen all scattered along. But for the most part, just sit back, relax, enjoy the ride. We'll cover specific topics with swim, bike, and run training. We'll go through race recaps, race previews. Every 134 podcasts we'll have on a guest. We have no sponsors. We have no ads. We're probably going to stay that way. But our main goal is to keep you happy and healthy and enjoying your endurance sports journey.
Yes, we're probably going to stay that way.
I mean, for now. I mean, for today. I mean,
Dude,
I feel like we're in that week where everyone's making promises. I just want to make you promises. I'm just saying properly. I mean, I feel like that's a good thing. It's like, let's have a great year. I'm like, that's a huge leap. Like, can we just start with like, let's have a good week? Like, let's start small. Because you know what everyone said last year? Let's have a great year. And, we saw that ended up. So, but some people had a good year. I feel like I had a pretty solid year. But let's just have a good week. Let's focus on the small things that we can like see right in front of us before we get way out into
because
whatever the year is going to happen.
A lot of times progress in general is 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Do you agree with that?
That progress is 1 step forward and
growth.
2 steps back. Growth.
Well, growth can be
I do, because you can't get there or you'll stop growing.
right.
So
because
I see
if
what
you have
saying.
great
year
in mind, and then all of a sudden today isn't great, you're like, damn, I'm not going the right
Behind the
direction,
eight
but
ball.
I am. Because sometimes it's, anyway, I'll let you get in. Do you want to talk? Do you have something you want to talk about?
I have too many topics for today, so I'm going to need you to rein them in for me.
Okay.
I'll go. I know you wanted to kind of riff on the email that I sent out to our team this morning, but I also, yesterday I watched not on time, but I recorded it because frankly I wasn't really in the mood to cry at 2:00 Eastern time yesterday. So I delayed and recorded the NBC special they did about Chris Nikic, I think is how you pronounce his name. He was the first Down syndrome person to complete an Ironman. Did an Ironman for this last November. They did a whole story on him for an hour, and I thought it was fascinating and enlightening. If you haven't watched, I think you should. I would encourage you. It's not just about triathlon, but it's about the community of Ironman and triathlon in general, and that's something that spoke to me greatly, was hearing those words come out of his mouth, especially for, I would imagine, like my mom, when I was younger, before my mom started working at Lipscomb, she worked very heavily in the special ed department, so we were always around. We always had kids with Down syndrome or disabilities over to our house, and we kept a relationship with them for a long time. And so having been around kids like that for a long time, like it hit me and moved me very, like in a different way, I think. But it was awesome to hear him explain almost in terms of like, yeah, I'll just do it. in kind of like a naive optimism kind of way that sometimes kids with, Down syndrome can have. It's like, yeah, like why not? Like sometimes they can be very unaware of like all the what really goes into all the things that are happening. It was just to hear him talk about that and how important it was for him to have like a guide and a partner to help him do things. And just being part of a community. I just think it was fascinating that a person was able to do this, and we got all behind him, and it would create a hoopla, and he did it at the end of what was, a lot of people's worst year ever or hardest year ever. Yet he was able to basically not necessarily put his blinders on, but I guess to be undeterred in his determination. And I think some people would call that naive or unaware, and some people would just call it focused and dialed in. And I thought it was awesome. It's really a special story and an outstanding. They did an outstanding job following it. And one of the things that really stood out to me was his father. And this is, I guess, kind of a spoiler alert, but he said one of the most energizing things he would do, and he would do this over the whole course of the race. Like it looked like 2 or 3 safety guys, a guy pacing him, and then his dad was like falling around on a scooter. He whatever. I won't spoil it all. If you haven't watched it, you should watch it. But he said that anytime he felt like he needed something that was uplifting, he would stop and he would give him a hug. A hug was like his energy piece, his thing to give. And and especially like, going through like the year that many of us have gone through, and hugs have basically like been frowned upon, for like for a lot of reasons. Like I mean, I'm a hugger. I haven't really abstained, that much for it. I was reading another quote to piggyback off that, was from another coach this weekend, and he said, and I quote, "When we have someone to physically or psychologically share the load, everything seems a bit more manageable, a bit more doable, and a bit less threatening. When we feel secure and supported, the way in which we see the world changes." And I couldn't agree with that anymore.
I couldn't agree more, man.
I thought that was very, that was part of like the process that Chris was going through with his parents and his dad and his support crew and his partner. He just felt ultimately and unquestionably supported by people. And I think, and then we talked about this before, like that's one of the pieces that people really say that they get out of coaching, that they feel like they have someone else there to go through life with. And if there's ever been a year that people have needed it for a lot of people, it's been this past year, just to have someone else, feel like you're not just doing this whole fucking thing alone and by yourself and with no one to support you, no one to be there for you, no one to lend an ear. 90% of the conversations that you and I have had this year with our athletes have had nothing to do with triathlon. It's been about life. It's been about people. It's been about their obstacles. It's been about, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm going through. I'm just glad I have someone to tell. And that's, I think it's invaluable, I think, to have people and to have surroundings and to feel supported and to feel that love. And I think that is what can propel us. And I think connection and I think overall health and how people prioritize their health this year are going to be probably the 2 biggest things we're going to see in just the general population. Because I think it's 2 things that people have greatly taken for granted the last few years is our ability to seemingly and easily just, we can just connect via phone and whatever, but it's been like the face-to-face, the Zoom calls, the hugs, I was running trails on Saturday, and I ran because they finished the connector out in the back of our house, and I've been running there every single day, not every single day, but for 3 days in a row. I haven't seen a single solitary soul, period. Came back around the last corner, had a mile left, and I look up the trail and I see what I feel like is a C26 Bizer, and I'm like, what? Who is this? I don't no. There's
everywhere,
someone,
everywhere.
It's got to be, either I'm just seeing things, or, someone bought one, hated it, and threw it away and gave it to gave it to the thrift shop, and someone's out, crushing it with their flat build. And so, but ended up running was actually one of our athletes who lives in Mississippi but has family here and Chattanooga, and she was with her daughter. Anyway, we ran up, and my first instinct, without even hesitation, was
give her a hug.
Give me a hug. It's just, it was that I honestly didn't think twice about it, to be honest. I'm sure people will critique me for that, but it's just like that thing. It's like you smile, you're happy, you're like, it's just, I don't know. I feel like it's energizing. That's the support and the community piece, and just having people to support you all the time and not feeling like you're just so alone, and not just in training, because I think that's like one of the misconceptions people think about too when they hear about, how online coaching or the things that we do with our community, and you and I say this all the time, and we probably generally can't even say it enough, is that our athletes are 100% our greatest strength. Like people want to be a part of C26 and what we do. Yeah, we provide good coaching, but we have a community that is, in my opinion, second to none. And that, as I think, is what saved people this year, is what has brought people together. It is what has pushed people farther. It has made people more resilient, because there is really, truly nothing better in life than feeling supported.
I agree, dude.
So that's kind of the general area I was hoping to go today. But we can riff on. There's a lot in there. We can riff on cheese if you want.
We talked a little bit about this concept of ignorance is bliss before we started, and I like to think of that as like not true ignorance, but sort of ignorance to things that don't mean much to you, or that are trying to distract you. And there's something beautiful about creating your own little world in the world, and just kind of taking care of yourself and doing the best things you can for you. Because, when you're at your best, you're at your best for everybody, So it's really important, I think, to, kind of find those little growth places and build yourself and sort of tune out, man. And that's one of the things that I agree that this year has really last year, I should say, has put a really big spotlight on health and everything like that. But the way it's happened has kind of got me a little concerned, in the sense that, there has been a tendency more to like shrink it in and be like at home and be like that's not, to me, that's the opposite of living in a way. It's just like, reaching out and touching people, or like you said, give them a hug. I'm glad you did that, by the way. That's just me. I think it's good for people's energy and stuff like that to have that connection. I mean, the physical touch in the world. I mean, people talk about the physical touches. It's like one of the most important things you can have, and it's a very simple thing. And I just love that people are thinking more about health and things like that. I just hope that somehow, some way, that translates into real action, because I get the sense sometimes it's really been hard, and it gets harder, and it's sort of like we get lazy and complacent with things like that. We can think about it, and the more we get in our own heads, the worse off we are a lot of times, I believe. I mean, the more we try to sift through the world's problems in our own brain, that's a recipe for disaster, I think. So I don't know where else we can go with what we're doing, but
I think that one of my biggest things with this last year, and I think in terms of just, first of all, like it's a 2-second difference in last year and this year. If you think about it, like there is this huge excitement about, it's a new year, and it is on the calendar, but it's separated by like literally like 2 seconds. Like the clock ends in 2020, and then all of a sudden it's 2021. Like, things are alive, things have changed. And I got an email this morning from one of our athletes who was just like brutally honest, and she was like, and we kind of went through this like in our email this morning. Was a lot like yeah, it's a new year, but it's probably still the same you in a lot of ways. And I'm not saying like, and I do, like, it's not a new year, you're the same person. Like, you can choose to be different. You can make different decisions on how you want to live your life. But the point I was trying to get across to our athletes this morning was like, everything in life is most things in life are your choice. You can make the decision to, like we talked about, before we went on air, and what I mentioned in the email was like, you can choose to look at life. And this goes for, race, if you want to put it towards like races happening or not happening, or how I should train or how I don't want to train, or how is life affecting me. And everyone gets affected with things differently. I still have anxiety about things sometimes. Like, it's something that's very different for me now based versus like the anxiety that I had when I was drinking. But now that I'm sober, I still have anxiety. It's just a very different kind. And I know how to, on most days, I feel like I do a pretty good job of managing it and like dealing with it, but I'm not immune to it. I still have it. I still have episodes of being down and being anxious, or being scared. Like, I still have all those feelings, but when I kind of get down to how I'm going to deal with it and manage it, and how I want to look at progressing and growing, and not just like sitting and being stale and dying and being stagnant, it's like, I want to keep going. And if I want to keep going, then I need to look at things more like, is this really happening to me? Or is there just things that are happening around me? And we have like formulated a society where that's basically all that happens, is we are a product of what's happening around us, and that generally just kind of veers ourselves into being frightened and scared. And sure, there are plenty of things to get frightened of. Sure, absolutely. I am 100% terrified of flying. Is that an irrational fear? No. Is it my life? Yes. Okay. So that's just me. Like, I'm literally terrified of getting on a plane. Like, that's where I am with it, but whatever, we'll cross that bridge another day. So yeah, I'm not saying that being scared is wrong or being anxious is a bad thing, but I'm just saying, like, the way that we look at things, we're so easily deterred in our daily life with what's going on around us and not just going on and happening. Like, we get offended very easily. It's like, well, a lot of people say, like, your stoicism, they would say you're not offended. You're something didn't offend you. You're choosing to be offended. Like, that doesn't have to offend you. You're just generally choosing to be offended by it. And you're wasting energy and time and effort on something that's really just your choice. So it's really kind of on you, not someone else. So when you look at, like, how you can progress this year and how you can kind of mentally wrap your brain around it, it's like, is it like my first sponsor that I ever had, one of the things he would tell me when I would get really anxious about, because I was going through a lot in my early years of sobriety. And he would always tell me, he's like, Robbie, he was like 73 at the time. It's like a real old, like, wise guy. He was just very straightforward. He's like my grandfather. And he said, is anything wrong right now? And I would be like, no, but it could. And he's like, well, no, but he was like, but is anything wrong right this minute? Like, we'd be sitting out having lunch and he's like, no, but is anything wrong right now? I'm like, no, like, we're having lunch. He's like, okay, so why don't you just be in that moment instead of, what he would say is, like, living in a problem that doesn't exist, because we like to opine and talk and obsess and talk and mention and start threads and emails and texts. And it's like, what could. And you just don't know. But the thing is like, the only thing that you do know is right now, but most of us find ourselves living in the what ifs or what could and not the right nows. And we do that with training. It's like, well, I want to be this and I want to be that and I want to do this or I want to, and I just think it's an important time to, and we address this as well, is like, we don't just be focused on being a better athlete or being a better triathlete or whatever. Like, you need to focus on being, hopefully, like, challenging yourself as a person to look at the way that not that you train, but look at how and who you are every day and do the things that you feel like are going to make you a better person and a better, more resilient, capable person, because that in turn is going to make you a better athlete. It's not like, oh, well, you're a great athlete, but your whole world is crumbling around you and you can't manage life and you're totally anxious. It doesn't work that way, right? It's not like you can have one without the other. Most would tell you, like, you got to get your life right and how you can manage things differently, and then everything else will fall into place or will just become a lot easier to manage.
Yeah. 90% of life is showing up. Was that the saying? You ever heard that one?
I've heard of that one for
yeah,
sure.
Something like that. I was writing this morning about sports and, like, what it's meant to me over my life. And one of the things that popped up, interestingly enough, was that sports always made me anxious. I was always afraid. Like, even though I was pretty good at stuff, I remember every time I walked on a baseball field to go play infield, I was nervous. I was afraid. And I think we forget that about, like, even pro athletes. I think they talk about that. It's just that pre-game, jitters or whatever like that, and how important it was that I just walked, into that fire, like we talk about. It's sort of like, to me, that is the most important thing. And I was just pretty, luckily had pretty good talent as far as baseball and things like that. But, like, then later in my life, I started doing this thing about, like, I always wanted to be a drummer. And at some point, I decided that, I had practiced enough and I wanted to go do an open stage. And let me just tell you, I don't think I've ever been more nervous or anxious or freaked out in my life than I was at that moment. And it was one of those things where at the time you're just like, it's an out-of-body experience and you're not grounded at all and you're definitely not in the moment and stuff like that. But I think those moments are what life is about, and going through those things, because it creates an opportunity to find peace in things that scare you. And I look at that with, that's how you feel about races. Every time there's a race coming up, most of us, if it matters, like, you can kind of start to adjust and feel a little bit more calm as you go. But I think that's the point, right? Is that we have to put ourselves in those situations before we can figure out how to beat them. And that could be as simple as showing up at your new job the first day or whatever it is. I mean, those are the moments that kind of like really can take over and make you like freak out or whatever. But like, it's so important just to show up, you know, just to show up and go out there and do it, because I just don't think that, I mean, that is the purpose really, is like to face those things. I mean, and that's what I mean. It's like get out of your comfort zone. Like if, you know, if we kind of get in a bad habit of just sitting around right now, it's a really bad place. So, you know, just, you know, it goes right down to that workout and putting on your shoes. You know, it's like what does it take to get over that threshold to actually step through that box and go after it, even though you're afraid of it, you know?
In my opinion, everyone in life needs an opponent they feel like they can see or feel or at least combat. And I think one of the biggest things this year that has been really hard, and people I think have just probably unwillingly, and some people probably willingly, just kind of thrown the towel in and let what is obviously, and with the pandemic and things have happened, like what a lot of people would probably say is an invisible, you know, threat to them as society. Like, and exactly. that is like, you can't see it, which I think is also what scares people the most, is like, it's something that you could contract or not contract, or you don't know where it is or who's got it or what's it. So I think that's terrified people. And so what's happened with, especially for triathletes with no races happening, is if you've chosen to, I think, just not train or no races are happening, you've lost the ability to feel like you can get up every day. And you've got this lingering thing out in the middle of not out in society, in the world, that's there and that you can't see and that you can't really feel. But then you look at your training, and what you used to have was, I got to get up every day and like hop in the ring and give this race, give it a body shot, maybe not an uppercut, but I got to get in the ring and do something today, and I get to feel like I'm being a part of doing something and growing and progressing and training, and I'm challenging myself, and it's not easy, but I can see it, I can feel it. It's just a piece. It's not the whole thing. It's not a whole round even. It's just a punch. And by not choosing, I think, to train or to go after a goal or to be a part of a process, you've basically chosen to wake up every day and step into a ring and fight an invisible opponent that just can run around you, hit your body shot here. Where'd that come from? Right. You feel like you can't really be on the offensive. You can't attack. You can't be proactive. And a lot of people have chosen to, I think, to be just very frightened and reactive, and just have kind of retreated to become a person that they aren't. Because if they look back and the people that they were, or how they trained and how they acted and how their mentality was, it's like they were proactive. They were, challenge me. Like, I want this. Like, I want to do this. Like, just give me a shot. Like, I want to do this. And then that's why I think it's so important to have also just someone in your corner, whether it's a training partner, whether it's a tri club, whether it's a coach, whether it's a community or a team. Like, think of the difference. Think of the difference in waking up every day and feeling like you've got to step in the ring of life, and you have to go to battle with an invisible opponent you can't see. You can probably swing a few times, but you're probably not going to land anything, but you're probably going to take some shots, whether it's from anxiety or just feeling down or being depressed or feeling discouraged, or frankly, just as scary for people is just not doing anything, just being sedentary and just choosing to sit and be terrified. Or you can wake up every day, and yes, the opponent is still there, but you wake up every day, you hop in the ring, you get in there, you at least get to take one or two shots, and then you look back and you see somebody in your corner. Hey, nice work. Hey, keep up there. Or you missed, but hey, we'll get back at it tomorrow. You have this part. That's why I think so many people have also stuck to training the past 6 or 12 months, because they needed that daily win to feel like there was something that they could take charge in, and that they could be a part of, that they could just be challenged in and grow and feel like, this is a small victory today. It's not the whole victory, but it's a small victory. But then you look at it and you look at all those small victories, all those small fights you got in that ended up winning, and you might have felt like, you might not even broken a sweat some days, but they all add up, and you can still achieve like really, really amazing things in the midst of that. But I think it's just, I think it's really, really important, which is also, I think, why in normal years, some people feel like they have to have a race. They feel like they have to have a challenger. We need it. I think we need to be pressed. We need to be challenged in life. You hear that about teams that are undefeated, or going like they kind of get complacent. Like, we needed that challenge. Or people will say, and usually coaches say this, I'm glad we lost. Like they'll say, I'm glad we lost.
Got something to work on.
I'm glad we got something to work on. I'm glad we can kind of get refocused. We've just been kind of cruising. And I think people want life to be too easy. We want life to be simple. And yeah, it should be simple in a way, but only simplistic in the ways that you want it to be. Not because, you're not challenging yourself, you're not pressing yourself. And it's been popular to retreat and to go within yourself and just not do anything or not be proactive and not challenge yourself because it's 2020, baby. You get a free pass. Like you don't have to do that. But when you look
that's your team out
that's
there
your
telling
team.
you.
But when you look at when races come back and or you're looking for jobs or you get back in the workforce or kids go back in school, like you're going to know the ones that just chose not to do that. Like Jeremy Shearer, one of our athletes, shot an email over to me. I think it was December 31st or whatever. We've been working there for quite a while. And he was like, hey, long list of things. And he just read Stillness is the Key, which is another awesome book by Ryan Holiday. And he was like, and it's just want to let you know, even though we had a rough year at it and I really didn't get to race at all. He was like, I still set a 5K, a 10K, a 10-mile, a half marathon PR, and also a 20-minute, a 60-minute, and a 90-minute power. We got better this year. And I was like, that's awesome. That's just to me, like that doesn't say really that much about my ability to coach or his ability to be a performer, but it speaks volumes in how he approached the year as a person, right? And to be undeterred and to look for challenges and to always see the opportunity to grow. And what that means is if you want to grow, like you said, sometimes it means one step forward, two steps back. Because if you want to grow, you can't be done. It can't always be, 3 or 4 steps forward, because that means sometimes it's just too easy, and I think sometimes we fall into that trap of easy means doing nothing. Right. And so I think if you're looking at how to approach the year with your training or with racing and the uncertainty that might still be in the early part of the year with some of the races going on, it's like, what do you got to lose? And not just from a triathlon standpoint, but what are you going to choose to lose as a person by not giving yourself that daily challenge, that daily dose of exercise and training that makes you feel like, some days it makes you feel superhuman. Like you get done with a workout and you feel like, gosh, I can do this. And boy, does it feel good. And frankly, we all need to have that kind of feeling every single day.
Mm. There's another saying. The older I get, I feel like the less I know. I mean, that's just me. And as you're talking about that invisible enemy thing, all I kept thinking was like, that invisible enemy is my mind. It's like, it's just sitting up there every day trying to trick me or do something like that. And I think the more I get into because it's sort of like that, it's our own realm that we create. And here we are. I had an athlete the other day that was like, on her schedule was an FTP test, and I don't necessarily think that meant to be there or wasn't meant to be there at the time. She put a note in training piece that she was afraid of it or that kind of intimidated her. And I said, and I reacted. I left her a note, said, you don't have to do it or whatever. If that doesn't feel right at this time and that sort of thing. And then she didn't see the note and she actually did it and she got done and she's like, oh my goodness, that really hurt, but it felt so good. It's sort of like that idea of going out there and doing something just to feel it and doing a challenge like that to just kind of wake up a little bit, because that's another thing is I think we can kind of get in this groove that we're like, oh man, this is going pretty good. And then you start to doubt it because it doesn't feel like, anything major is happening like that. And sometimes I think we need that test. And I think the invisible enemy too can be races, right? They're just sitting out there and, it's always kind of like that elephant in the room, just kind of like, all right, one of these days coming up, I'm moving towards you and I'm going to have to face you head on. And if it's not there and you're just sort of looking around and you're like, I can't see anything. I don't even know what the hell I'm trying to do right now. And
maybe I just won't get in the ring anymore.
Right. But that's what, exactly. That's what you're saying about community or having somebody there to remind you that, hey, you're facing this every day. And there's like, sort of crystallizing or defining whatever that enemy is. I mean, if it's a made up thing in your mind and you want to try to overcome it, I think that it helps to have somebody to remind you and point that out and talk that through with other people. And, we get to do that every day, just sitting here, or every other day or whatever. And it's just so helpful, man. But I don't know, man. Like I said, I feel like I'm just I getting older and don't understand anything anymore.
And on that cue, we're going to put out a worldwide request for new podcast hosts. Mike's losing his marbles. We need someone to carry the torch.
Into a simplistic mode, man. It's sort of like you can't control things, And I think that's what you get to the point of. It's like you can, when you're young and you think you know everything or whatever, and then you kind of live through it, and then you're like, wait a minute, that's not what it's all about. It's just about doing things right now. And you referenced it earlier, being in the moment at lunch with your sponsors, sort of like, just do it, man. What's right in front of you. That was like, one of my, it seems like lately my resolution's always been like, just do what's in front of you. Don't like get distracted off and like just go down this rabbit hole of like, oh wait, if that, this and that, and this and that, and this and that. So I'm going to like do this now so I don't have to do that later, or whatever the case may be. But it's just so much simpler if you just get on the bike or you just put your shoes on and go run. Seems like it solves a lot of problems.
No, it solves everything. I mean, it doesn't solve everything, but it solves a lot. And the thing about it is that it at least solves something, right? Instead of solving nothing, which I think is a lot of times what feels easier in the moment, but does zero for us, right? Like you said, like going down a rabbit hole, like a lot of times we get so disinterested or unmotivated, or we don't see the point in filling in this very shallow hole that could be meaningful, that we end up going down this gigantic rabbit hole of nowhere. And we end up going nowhere and doing anything and being totally unfulfilled. And we think, God, I wasted all that time. I could have filled in 17 of these little small shallow holes, but instead I went down this random rabbit hole of someone else's life or someone else's anxiety. And here I am with the same 17 holes I got left, to fill in and do whatever. And it's like, we do that in life with everything, because life is, we have so much too much at our fingertips now to be distracted with and do. And I think one of the other things is we look at, like the optimism and the positivity and the excitement that we can have of a brand new calendar year, while also still, dealing with the wake and the reality that still is a lot of, the leftover parts of what was a challenging year for a lot of people, is that there's a whole lot to gain in the early parts of a challenging process, right? And it doesn't have to happen overnight. And a lot of times you might not feel like you're going anywhere, but you can create new habits and new patterns through this challenging experience that is life, and that you can, and that helps you navigate life differently. Like I remember, how some days, how impossible it felt. And I think this is probably the reason I've become such like a poo-pooer on an old school, grumpy Grinch with New Year's, is like, I remember back when I was like the first few months of getting sober, like some of the days felt generally impossible to do, like generally impossible to make it. I was like, not just how am I going to make it through today, but how am I going to keep going through like a streak of what could be multiple, like not just like 10s and 20s, but like maybe even 100 of these days. Like, how the heck am I going to manage these days? And it was terrifying. And I think, you and I have had this conversation many a times. And I think I've even shared it on the podcast before, is that I feel like for me, because of just like the darkness and despair and the horrid place that I was in before I went to treatment, I was there for 90 days, was that I needed all of the turmoil and all of the challenges and all of the hardships and all of the obstacles to be heaped on me almost at once. Like, it wasn't like, let's just spread it thin, like, like a little bit of butter over some toast over the course of a couple of years. Let's just do it all right now. And I remember exactly where I was sitting. I was petting the ranch dog, which the ranch is the place that I went to get treatment. And my therapist came up and talked to me. He was like, dude, I got to be honest with you. He was like, I've worked with people for a long time in this field. And it's like, I don't know that I've ever dealt with someone who's going through as much as you're having to go through in the first like 45 days of being sober. And being like having like an athletic mindset or kind of like, that like, it didn't seem like a challenge. Cause that moment I was like bursting in tears on this bench outside of our house. And he said that, and it kind of woke me up a little bit to the fact that this is going to be really, really, really hard. And so if I don't do everything that I can do every day, regardless of how easy it seems, then I don't know where I'm going to end up. And I genuinely feel, again, like that I am the way I am today, and I've been fortunate enough that relapse isn't a part of my story, and I am where I am in life because of how impossible my life felt then. And I'm thankful for it. And I think in the midst of these really hard, challenging times that we can be, as long as we focus on the things that we can do, because that's all I could do is like, you know what, I'm going to do the best that I can today, and I'm going to make it through the day. And then tomorrow I'm going to wake up and see if I can do the same thing over again. And each day I did it, I would wake up with like a little more, not confidence or ego, but I was kind of like, I think I can do this.
Just got a little easier.
It got just a little bit easier every day until finally I got to a point to where that the challenges and the obstacles, I didn't welcome that, but they were just kind of like lunch. Just something I had every day.
Right.
Like they just became, and I don't want that for people in general, but it just became of what I knew I had to do and what I had to weather and what I had to persevere every day. And through like just the small daily, sometimes hourly wins I would produce over the weeks and the months and the what ended up being years, is when I finally got to a point to where I could put it all behind me. I don't know that I've ever felt stronger in my entire life. Like I was actually mentioning this to the person, if I could go back and relive like one day in my life, it would be one of the top 3. And it was also one of the top 3 hardest days of my life, but it was a day where I felt immense emotional and mental strength like I don't know that I've ever had before in life. But I only had that because I had basically just been daily, unknowingly, almost in a simplistic way, just preparing for it in a way that it just accumulated over time by doing these small things that seemed some days irrelevant, some days 100% necessary just to make it. And then I ended up just done. And still to this day, like I look back and I think of, because again, going back to like, I think we need challenges. I don't want to be challenged like that again ever, period. But when I go back and some days I get like anxious, or I look back and think, how the hell did I manage to navigate that? And today I'm feeling incapable of managing this very small dose of anxiety, which compared to the one I would have like, years and years ago is like a drop in the bucket. It's like, and I'm thinking but sometimes it's that challenging piece. And that's why I think I've continued to gravitate towards endurance sports. It doesn't make me anxious. It doesn't make me depressed. It doesn't make me afraid, but it generates this sense of responsibility to doing something that's somewhat accountable yet uncomfortable every day, that I think resonates with me and builds and helps build that part of my character, that my perseverance or resiliency, whatever you want to call it, that makes me feel like I still got it, right? Mm-hmm. That I can still do this. I can still get up every day.
It creates more opportunities.
Yeah, it creates more, exactly. And I think we all need those opportunities every day.
Yeah, that sounds like you're basically changing the perception of problems that you face. So it's like a different, and you slowly whittle away at that over years and years and days, and it becomes easier. But you don't notice it necessarily. Like I was this weekend, I woke up and I'm like, I don't know why, but like my morning routine, like I've been working out a little bit more, I've been eating a little bit better, sleeping a little bit better, and I woke up and I was kind of doing stuff around the house. I'm like, this feels a little bit easier for some reason. Whether like loading the dishwasher, putting things away, and I've talked about that in the past, but it's sort of like that is the process, right? So I think conversations like this are in a weird way really important to remind people of that, because we get just so kind of caught up in the daily routine that we don't notice when things are moving the right direction because they're so subtle. We can sit here and, go through, you can tell like when things are going well here at work and what we're doing and things like that are kind of flowing and they just seem natural. But it's like important, I think, to step back from that and look at it like, oh, see, the steps we're taking every day make a difference. Because like, that was another thing I was writing about this morning. It was like, I have this like thing, and I think a lot of people do, where they sort of, as a younger person, you predict what your life is going to look like, or you have this image in your mind, right? So you look at it and you're like, man, that's what it's going to look like, even though it may be vague or whatever, it's out there. And then today I was thinking about like, why do I keep doing that? You know, you sort of like keep looking ahead and kind of like, okay, in 10 years, this is what's going to happen and this is how it's going to be. And then it's never really like that, but it's okay. It's good, actually. With things, if you keep showing up and you keep doing the things and with that intention we talk about, it is what it is, man. You can't like, I don't know, you can't force yourself down a path, I think, for too long, or it just, I don't know. It's just sort of about letting go and maybe accepting. Like, it's so hard to accept those things that you're talking about, these little things, right? You know, the idea of, you're like, how can I get through this, man? How can I do this for like a whole year? How can I train for Ironman for a whole year? That just becomes so overwhelming that, you know, you can't, it just it kind of weighs you down. So like, but my point is, I guess, is to how do we appreciate those daily little things like that, whether it's, you know, those 30-minute runs and things like that, and realize and keep in mind, like top of mind, that they're making a difference. And it's just so hard to notice that, I think. And I think we need to be reminded of it. And I think that's a lot of what you and I do with coaching, I think, is it's like, you know, just easy 30 minutes, no big deal or whatever. No, it was a huge deal because when I go in there and, you know, a third of the people like throw up a red on that day, you know, like that just gives me a sign. It's like, and I know that feeling firsthand is like, I don't want, you know, I'm going to get it dressed for this, but it always turns out better. And it's always a step in the right direction. And I don't know. I think maybe that's why I like to write after I work out. It's like, okay, just remind yourself what that was, man. That feeling you had just now.
The goal is to find new hills. Everyone needs a hill in their life. Mm-hmm. Everyone needs a hill in their route. And what I mean by that is, I was actually having this conversation with another one of our athletes, Sam, a few weeks ago. We were talking about how before we lived here, when you come out of the run course in Chattanooga 70.3, there you go up this, you know, what doesn't look like a very inviting hill.
Right. And
then we talked about, you know, I oftentimes, like, if I'm running long or whatever, I'll run from my house over the side of the bridge. I'll do it. And then after you just do it and you just do it and you just do it and you just do it, the grade of the hill hasn't changed. Right. The hill has stayed the same. But then there were a few times, like this last fall, where I remember walking, I was like, this doesn't seem that bad anymore. Like but months before that, I would look at it and think, oh, my God, this is going to suck. And then it became more of like, this isn't that bad, but it's only not that bad because I did it so much. And like, I even had this feeling this morning. I went out for my run and I would like, you know, take these trips back on, you know, when I first moved here and I'd come out of my house, I'd take a left, and it was kind of like long incline. And I remember like my heart rate skyrocketing and the pace real dropping, and looked at it and I was like, man, I remember when this used to feel like a hill. So now what I do is I go find a new hill. You know, that still gives me that like uncomfortable, I've got to slow down, I've got to do it. And because what I want is at some point for that to no longer feel like a hill. You know, it'll still be a hill, you know what I mean? Like, it won't have that effect of, I've got to really slow down, my heart rate skyrockets. It'll just become another piece of pavement in your life that you just go on and you think, all right, where's the next one? But you always have to have, I think, something like that. That's why people who are obsessed with flat routes and flat, like, hills are just good for your soul. They like remind you that there's something else out there that's challenging, that can make you grow, that has to make you slow down, and that also makes you very internally aware of what you really are and what you really have at that moment from a fitness standpoint, because you have to slow down. You can't just, or it'll wreck your whole run, you know, but then you do it long enough. You do it, you know, many times you can, but you're also consistent in the other areas of your training. And then you come do it and you're like, I ran, or just simply, I ran the whole thing today. Like, those are my favorite quotes that I ever get some of them that I ever get in Training Peaks is, I got to find a new route. Like, is it like they'd had this like 40-minute route and they're like, and I got back home in 37. I need to find the new route. And you're like, that's right, baby. Go find that new route. That's a little bit longer. Or you get that, there's this hill that I always go up and or even sometimes it's biking. Like they have to slow down a lot. They have to, or running. They're like, I ran the whole hill today. I ran the whole thing. And so now it's still a hill, but it no longer becomes like your kryptonite or your thing that always gets you. Now you've got it. But now the point is to go find something else that kind of has you at the moment. That's kind of challenging. That's why I think it's important to do things that slow you down. That's why I love trail sometimes, because pace becomes no longer relevant. It's just slower. It just is. But it takes you out of that mindset of I have to go fast in order to get something out of something, but get out of your workout. But it's more of so I just got to do it and keep moving and navigate it and just enjoy the work that's being done. Not that I'm having to do the work. And that's what hills bring. And I think we all in life and we all in training need hills. We need obstacles. We need bumps along the way. We need things that make us slow down and cause us to pause and think, but also look up and think, why are we doing this? This isn't very fun. But then you think, but what have I and what am I getting out of it? Yeah, it totally, is way more than what I wouldn't get out of just not doing it, period. We all need these challenges. We all need to grow. And hopefully we can look at this in life of thinking, hey, it's good. It's good to be challenged. It's good it's not fun sometimes, but we need it. We need to be challenged. We need to grow. We need to push ourselves. And we have that opportunity right now, just like we have every single day. We shouldn't need some catastrophic event or this huge thing to be like, I'm afraid to fight back. It's just like every day's a fight. I mean, it just is. Like the things that happen today, some days are great, some days are bad, but wake up and have something to go to just to get after that's going to challenge yourself. And like you said, it could be a 30-minute run, because a lot of times the challenge in that is just thinking, I just got to get this done and just do it. Like, it's not exciting. It's not thrilling. It's not, oh my God, here we go. It's a 45-minute interval workout everyone's going to love. I'm getting like 17 likes. It's like, oh, there goes another 30-minute easy run. But that's what the building blocks are made of. And that's what gets you up and over the next obstacle.
I love you brought up hills, man, because that's a confidence builder. But the point you brought up about how the more you ran it, the more it just didn't seem like that. That's what it's all about, man. You think about like a pro, when you said that, the first thing I thought of actually was when we were interviewing Starkey and we were talking about Barlow and how he checked it out and how that last section of the Barlow Hill at Wisconsin is super steep. And, he said he either rode it or drove it. I can't remember. And we asked him what his decision was. Did he keep his heart rate down or did he bomb it? And he goes, I bombed it. But that to me was like, okay, I think a lot of, I don't want to say like that's the only difference, but a lot of the difference between people that decide that they're going to quote unquote be pro or an elite age group or whatever the case may be, that's where they're at in their mind. That, like it doesn't always mean that they're like they're in better shape necessarily than maybe someone that's close to them, but they have a confidence level that they have gotten through that. They don't look at that hill as like something that's really intimidating. They just look at it as like a hill and they just go for it, or whatever the case may be. That's how you build through repetition. I think that you get faster. And I think so much of that is in your mind. I really do. I mean, like when you're talking about that, there was a trail I used to run back in Nashville and there's a greenway and the trail is that one where about halfway between your old house and mine or where that steep thing over by that school. I saw that for the first time. I'm like, this thing like felt really, really steep, and it's probably a quarter mile long.
Looks pretty walkable.
Yeah, really walkable. And the first thing I thought of, or not the first thing, but one day I decided I was running really well. I'm going to run out there 4 miles, and I'm going to do repeats on that thing because, like, I just wanted to get familiar with it. I wanted it to not be a big deal anymore. And then, I used to do that a lot, and by the end, it's just like I was running up it pretty good. And it was in my mind, it just wasn't that big of a hill anymore. And there's something so powerful about that, whether it's, you're out riding your course or whatever, like it's like when we go to Natchez Trace, those hills the first few times I rode them were just like insurmountable almost, it seemed like. And you just had this sort of like aura about the whole thing. And it was just like out in the middle of nowhere and like this intimidating hill. And then by the end, it's just like you just dealt with it. It was still a tough climb a lot of times, but you get through it. And that's, to me, is the sign of getting faster and getting better and growing, but we just, don't think about it. I hate to keep going back to that, but like it just sort of like happens in your life, and you have to remember that that's like a confidence builder. You have to look at that as like, hey, I am getting better. And then you come to like a course like Chat 70.3 where they have that big pincher or whatever. And we did that 2 years ago, or I did it. And I couldn't even remember it. And I got to it and I was like, wait, that was it? Like, so it really does happen. You know, it's like some people were walking their bike up it or whatever. And it just really didn't feel like a big deal at all. So that's why you need more hills in your life, I guess is what I'm saying.
And a lot of people already chose months before that. They were walking it no matter what. Like I remember seeing that when the Wisconsin change, of course, like, oh, you gotta walk it. There's just no point in biking up the top. There's just get off your bike and walk it and save those. I'm like, okay, you can do that. But I'm gonna bust my ass so I can ride up the top, and I'm gonna pass you while you're walking it, and I'm gonna cruise on down. Like you can make those choices, but that's the thing is like the choices you make impact what you feel you can do for days and weeks and months sometimes, because it becomes part of who you are and what you believe you can, or you've just assumed or accepted that you can't do. Like every day there are things that we can and can't do, and then the next day is like totally different. Like there are a lot of days where you feel, especially like from an emotional and mental standpoint, you're like, I can take on the world. Like whatever happens. Some days you feel as fragile as an egg dropping off a 12-story building. Like you're like, what are you going to do? Every day is different, and every day you are different, but it's with the intention and the effort you put behind it. Because some days you might wake up and it might be a 30-minute run might be the best you got for the day. And the next day you might do a 2-hour bike and a swim, be like, that's it? Come on, give me some more, baby. That's how life is. But it's about the effort and the intent that you put in, and what you feel like you got out of it is oftentimes where your mind was when you went into it, right? It's not like, oh, well, because some athletes that I work with, they'll get a workout and they'll feel like they paced it terribly. They're like, I don't want to do that one again. Sometimes I'll have athletes, oftentimes even, is that they'll do one and they'll be like, I want that one again. I don't feel like I nailed it. I want it again. And so we'll do it again the next week. Because you want these opportunities to be like, oh, you paced it poorly. Let's do it again and do it again and do it again. Because what it does is, and that's why I love that, man. Such a fan of like hammering things home sometimes, even though it can seem boring and repetitive or unimaginable, for athletes who always have to have variety. It's like there is success and becomes part of your identity, I think, of who you see yourself as. Like, I can do this. I've already done it. Let me do it again and do it again and do it again and do it again. That's how it becomes a part of who you are and what you do. It's not just randomness and you feel like you failed or succeeded at something you don't have really anything to weigh it against. It's just, we need that. We need the repetitive nature of endurance training, which is a daily thing, to feel like we can manage, to feel like we can be successful, to feel like we can be strong, to feel like we can be capable, to feel like we can just basically do whatever the hell we want to do. And that might sound like, overconfident or egotist, but life is hard to manage, period. No matter what's going on, no matter what year it is, no matter what's going on, life is hard to manage. But endurance sports and the consistency that it requires, it turns you in and makes you into something that, just like I think we mentioned this a few weeks ago, is that training just becomes, you're not a triathlete. Triathlon is just kind of what you do, because your identity isn't based on the races you do or the Ironman that you do or the swim, bike, run specific training that you do. It's just part of your life, and it's become part of who you are, because it shaped you in a way you're now Mike Torelli. I am now Robbie. This is what we do. It's just part of who you are. It's not, our identity isn't swept up into it. It's just helped us create positive attributes and characteristics that we are very proud of, that now prolong us into other parts of our life that have like a very positive ripple effect on what we do. And that was like one of the things, to kind of bring it back to the Chris Nikic thing, is, and if I'm brutalizing his last name, I apologize, but one of his things, I think his dad said, was on his little whiteboard list was buy a car, buy a house, and this third one, which that was also, was marry a smoking hot blonde. But his dad was saying the completion of this is just a vessel to give him confidence to do those things, and things that be more important, things that people probably said you can never do, that you can never accomplish, that you'll never be independent. People also said you couldn't do this. So you kind of have that kind of like confidence boost and that kind of chip on your shoulder. It's like, you already told me I couldn't do this. Who says I can't do this? Right. And I think we need that. I don't think we need to live life with a chip on our shoulder, but I think we need to live life with being able to challenge ourselves and grow and even have setbacks that propel us into or that make us get things right and get things back. Like, I think a lot of people, hopefully it's been a wake up call. Like, let's just get it back. Let's get going. Like, we need this big slap in the face. Like, just get it back and get to work, because people will say you can't all the time. And if you choose to listen to them, then you can't. You won't be able to do those things. Or you can choose to get to work and prove yourself that you can, because once you do that, then, it's not just one door opens, but all the doors open if you want them to.
And when you have that success, and you can build on it, that's what I think we miss out on a lot of times is, a lot of people will do, including me, an Ironman race and sort of let it go instead of building on that confidence, because that confidence is definitely there the day or the 2 or 3 or 4 days after you race. And then all of a sudden, then you start forgetting. It's like, oh man, I got there, but can I do it again? I mean, so you want to build on that. And I think, in some ways it's like, all right, we got a little do-over shot here, let's get it going right now and just go about it the right way and finish up. It's sort of like, I love what you said about the repeating and conquering and things like that, because back to my drumming real quick, is like, when you start that, you have to master little things and then you move to the next step. So it's like, if that could be one workout, you kind of do it over and over and master it, and then you own that, and then you go to the next one, rather than doing a different one every day and like all over the wheel. And it's like, you kind of half-ass kind of get in, it's like you have a little fun with it because it's unique or whatever, but you don't really conquer. It's like when I go up to race Wisconsin or Louisville, or used to come down here to chat and race against locals who had been riding the course all summer, they smoke me, you know what I mean? And I always kind of like the idea of like being surprised by the course or whatever, but that's definitely not the way to get, better.
Know it like the back of your hand.
Yeah. You want to own it and then move on.
As we will move on.
We will move on
to our podcast on Thursday. As always, hey, we love you. We appreciate you tuning in. We'll be back on Thursday, regularly scheduled programming. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or the like, you can contact Mike, crushingiron@gmail.com. If you have any questions for me specifically, you can always reach out to me at c26coach@gmail.com. That's all I got, man.
That's it.
You got something?
Well, I just want to remind everybody that the C26 Club program is still open. We keep forgetting that people listen to these podcasts they're behind sometimes. So we're going to keep that open for a little bit longer. And c26triathlon.com. Check out the coaching tab and go down to C26 Club and find out everything about it. But other than that, that's all I got, man.
That's all I got.
Yeah. All right, buddy.
Talk to you later.